Okay. Hello, 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 and welcome to Just Talking. Aisha is off for another week, and it is my great pleasure to welcome Hina. It's Hina, right? It's yes. I always have to check because I sometimes I don't know if you guys do this. You talk to people all the time, and like people like to hear their own names, but it's like I don't use names. So there's a lot of times like there's around my building that I talk to people because I know who they are. They know that I know who they are. But like a friend of mine, her name's Marae, and it was a very hard name for me to remember. So it was just for whatever reason, I would call her Trouble for a long time. But anyways, that's my little thing. I'm not perfect with names yet. There's still hope. So
Great.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
it's good to have you here. And so I guess first to start with, this Movement Matters Challenge. What's your first impressions of this? Have you been incorporating movement more like now that we're getting into the nicer weather, or what does that mean to you?
I think for me, movement every day really makes a difference in helping me kind of get out of my head. Um, I know that I can very easily fall into a pattern of staying indoors, especially with the pandemic and there being like when the weather was cold or whatever. It's easy to just get into staying home anyway because that's just the vibe. So it has made a big difference for me to notice how I'm better when I do get out. And it doesn't have to be like a long thing. The shortest I will do is a 15-minute walk around the block of my where I live in that
Right.
building. And once I'm out though, I can do longer. So the hardest part is just getting out. Once I'm out, my body's happy, my mind is happy. I feel good about doing something for myself that I know is positive. And it's a good practice to kind of incorporate. And it doesn't matter. I've also noticed that it doesn't matter if I do a lot or a little, but if I do something every day, and walking really works really well for me because I like being outdoors. The air is fresher, better. You can be
Yeah,
out around people and not have to wear a mask if you're not with people, right? So I feel that it's
exactly.
a little bit more uh the connection with the outside world remains nurtured. Otherwise, I can kind of feel very disconnected
Yeah.
from everything. I live in a condo building,
Yeah.
so
I
I
hear
can be
you.
in my box and the world outside is moving and it can feel very stagnant. So if I'm out, I can feel like I'm still part of life and living and
Yeah. And
yeah.
you go for hikes with your son, right? Like so and I think that's important. I mean, I'm just here by myself, but it's nice to get those rituals with your children too, right? Like if they're at that age where they can, it just I think it just starts something that you guys do that together. So that's just something you do. So if you say, well, let's go for a walk, you just go for a walk, right?
Yeah.
So
It's easier for me to get my son. Well, he's the one who actually would say, like, if I would say, "What do you want to do, Sohan?" My son's name,
yeah,
he would say, "Let's go for a hike," and he'd offer that. But if I say, "Let's go for a walk outside downstairs," he's not that interested. So I just found that it feels more intentional
yeah,
if we plan a hike,
yeah,
because where we go we have to reserve time and we have 2 hours, so it becomes more intentional, it becomes more deliberate, and then we're in nature, like
yeah,
it's so much better. And I actually have gone twice by myself to
nice.
those hikes, which is a really weird experience, weird feeling, just to kind of do something so deliberate and so intentional, going half an hour away just by myself. But it really is a wonderful way of connecting with myself. I found that it keeps me out of feeling too. I don't want to use the word depression loosely, but
Yeah,
when we battle with it, often we're always prone to slipping into it
yeah.
when things happen. So uh, getting out and moving helps me stay on the healthier side of that line.
Exactly. No, and I think you bring up a really important point there, right? One of the reasons why, even for doing this in May, and for doing this now, is that we will have the summer upon us, where we will have the opportunity to, maybe we want to go paddling. I know we've been stand-up paddleboarding together, which was fun.
Yeah.
And again, it's something that you can do and keep physically distanced and all that kind of stuff. And you can go to, you can go into, places that are, the one thing I love about even my neighborhood is, like, I walk to the grocery stores sometimes. Now I have to plan that because it's not a 10-minute drive and a 10-minute drive back. I have to take an hour, but then I take a backpack and I go and I do my groceries. So it's like, if you can incorporate that, then that just becomes something that you do, right? And it's not, oh, it's going to take me this much time. And it really is about the mental health aspect. I mean, May is mental health month. But the other thing is, you get the negative ions when you're out in nature, so it actually helps, to make you feel better. And then we get into the time where you can take your shoes and socks off and walk around in bare feet on the ground. That's also really good for you, right? So,
Absolutely, yes.
and that's exactly, so that just feeds right into why we're talking about movement during this month, and why I did the May movement challenge, the May movement matters challenge, because this isn't about setting a goal. As we said, like last week we had, week one, which is about the body. And I know in the introduction that we did a week ago tonight, right? So this was, last Sunday, I did the launch of this.
Right.
And what happened with that is, I was talking about the fact that, like, it's not about running a marathon. You don't have to run a marathon if you have no interest in running. But hiking is something, and Heather, who was actually ended up being on the show on the launch, is that your why factor. Why are you doing that? You just talked about the fact that you're trying to keep depression at bay, and you're not saying clinically depressed, but it helps all kinds of depression, because it does lift us up. Fresh air helps us. Getting our lungs moving helps us. Getting our body moving, because that's what it's supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that I did want to touch on today is, and I did mention it on the first launch, is that flexibility is almost more important than endurance, right? So um, being able to understand our muscles, feel them getting looser, right? So I talked a little bit about what I call soka walking, and I showed that last week, where it's like, if you pretend that it's not pretend, you just keep your awareness on your hip joints, and you do like figure eights, but you can do it so it's like a little soca dance. You can do it so it's like a little belly dance, because belly dancing is all figure eights as well, right? So this is how your hips move. It's also how your shoulders move, right? So, soca hips are sort of forward, whereas belly dancing hips are sideways in a figure eight, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so what happens with this is it helps loosen up your joints. It helps loosen up your hips. So when I first started walking, my hips were a little tight. They were talking to me a little bit. And now when I wake up in the morning, it's easier to get out of bed, because now I go for a walk. At least I try to do at least an hour a day. And I think I've missed one day so far. I did ask people to have a little calendar to just jot down that they did go, because that's the whole gold star thing. Some of us like to have, oh, look, I've done this, and it's like, oh, I went out every single day. The other thing is, more importantly, and this is what we're going to focus on today, for me, for instance, my shin. Once I start walking, I feel it in the front of my shin.
Mm.
And the other thing that I talked about before is the fact that this is really about getting to know your body, and having your body talk to you, and having you connect with your body. So my shin, and the shin, by the way, that's one of the things when you hear people, they want to start running. So they start going and they get shin splints, because they don't know the difference between what's pain, like injury pain, and what's, oh, I gotta push it a little bit now.
Discomfort versus pain. It's a thin line.
Exactly. And a lot of it is like a little jock head, right? So it's like, so I walked, and I was going through that last week, where I felt it in my shin. And that's one of the posts that I did, was I showed One of the stretches that I do in the middle of the walk, right? And so the other thing is you just take your thumbs and you run it semi firmly down the front of your shins. You should never, ever, ever rush a shin. If you're feeling pain on the bottom of your foot, you can use your knuckles and work in, because that can lead to plantar fasciitis, which can, again, you can, pull a tendon, you can rip fascia, you can do a whole bunch of stuff, because fascia is like, it hardens, right? So, but it's like this, it's like, as I called it, the internet on the body, right? So it connects, so especially on our feet, around our ankles, around our hips, our shoulders. So it's important to get your body moving. So the one thing I did want to talk about with you tonight is, we had a lovely conversation yesterday about this, since we're going to have this chat on the show. And flexibility, this is one of the things that has been hijacked so much. And I just wanted to get your feedback on that. And that is things like yoga. In the West, we tend to take these things that are meant for something else and we turn them into what we need them to do, instead of us actually connecting to our body. And this is why yoga. So the one thing about yoga is that it is supposed to be able to have openness. Like if you have problems with your hips, hip flexors, you can find yoga. I posted a link last week of this classic stretch woman who was a dancer, and she does this dynamic, slow movement of, a stretching kind of movement. In yoga, in hatha yoga, the main thing about that is you're holding poses because they're allowing your muscles to relax, allowing you to breathe into your muscles, to be able to connect with your body, and to be able to allow it to relax in those poses.
Release. Yeah.
Because it's all supposed to be to help you meditate for hours at a time.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be get your 60-minute workout in.
Yeah.
So, and I know we had an interesting chat about yoga and your little yoga journey. Did you want to share that?
Sure. I will say, before I say anything I say is from my own experience, from hearing things from teachers that I've had over the years, and also my chiropractor, who I've had for now, I think 7 more than 17 years. And so just bits and pieces that have come together. So I never really was into yoga as such. I mean, it was I maybe took some classes in the in my university gym. Didn't really continue anything. Then I kind of got interested because my chiropractor told me about the studio that she used to go to, and I was first exposed to hot yoga. And I went in, I was like, oh my God, that's fantastic, because I could do things there that I couldn't do otherwise. And it was interesting. I had some trouble with the whole heat, but then I got used to it. So I started going more regularly to hot yoga. And in that at that studio, one point there was a workshop that was offered. It was called the Fundamentals of Yoga. So I started to get a little bit more interested. So I would listen to the instructions. I really enjoy learning about my body, and that's what I love about my chiropractor. She loves educating, and I love learning. So every time I went for a treatment with an issue, I'd learn a little bit, and I would incorporate the things that she would teach me. Not as much as she would like, not as much as I would like, but still, knowledge is helpful, because at least I know how to help myself when I have certain issues. So I took this Fundamentals of Yoga workshop, which was in the regular temperature room. So in the beginning, it was like, oh my God, I'm cold because I'm in my yoga tank top or whatever. But took as I went through every week, and there was a lot of in-depth explanation of some of the common poses, I started to have a different understanding of yoga. So two things happened that changed how I saw yoga, and I abandoned the hot yoga room after that. Um,
Sorry.
well, things happened, but the two things that happened at the fundamental yoga classes, she would show us this. the teacher, she showed us how to engage the muscles in every pose. For example, after in a flow state, whenever I would go into a downward dog, for example, I would just be like, to catch my breath, I would drop all my weight on my wrists and I
Mhm.
would have wrist pain. And I wouldn't
Mhm.
know how to, because I'm also in hot yoga, slipping a little bit. So I'd be like, get the towel, get the anti slip mat. But still, it would start to hurt. In the yoga fundamentals class, she showed us how to engage all the muscles, not just drop it. It's not just dropping on, it's not all our weight. So as I tried to kind of pull back my shoulders, align them with the ears, engage my core, lift my hips up, suddenly there's less weight on my wrists.
Mhm.
And then my body is heating up. I am no
Mhm.
longer cold in that room. Right. So I was like, oh, this is how you're supposed to do this. The
Mhm.
second lesson I learned was she talked about the mountain pose. Now, the mountain pose in a regular class is like rest period. I don't have to do anything. I'm just standing.
Yeah.
So she came and showed us. She's like, if you're a mountain, I should not be able to move you. So if you're just standing and if I come and push you and you're falling off, you're not in mountain pose. Mountain pose
Mhm.
means you're standing, you're grounding your feet, you're engaging all of your muscles, and you're standing firmly grounded
Yeah.
so that if I come and move you, you're not as easy for me to throw off.
Yes.
She made us stand in that pose
Yeah.
for a couple of minutes. And the heat in my body was unbelievable.
Mhm.
So, when after that, I really loved that fundamentals course. When I went back to the hot yoga class, I could not do it anymore because now my body is hot. It's not just the external heat. So I went and shared this with my chiropractor, and she told me that since hot yoga has become a fad, I'm going to call it, I don't think hot yoga is bad, but I think without the knowledge of yoga and understanding the depth of
Yeah.
the poses and how to do them properly, yoga can also cause injury.
Yeah.
And hot yoga, she said, I have had more clients come to me since hot yoga because people are going in there. The heat is external, it is artificial heat. There's a false sense of stretchability. But when you are back outside, your muscles have done more than they were capable of. And suddenly now you're causing tightness. And
Mhm.
there's more of that fascia buildup that requires like releasing, and people don't know how to. They just keep going back to yoga class thinking I'm going to stretch it out. I feel so good in my yoga class,
Yeah.
but then I come out and I'm tight again. So the fundamentals class taught me how to do yoga poses in a more engaged way,
Mhm.
and that really got me out. I could not do hot yoga anymore, but I was able to do better yoga, if there's such a thing, right? Because now I was more in touch with how my body is feeling, what's required, what's injurious, how
Yeah.
we kind of can make little tweaks to remove the chance of an injury.
Yeah.
We're holding poses. So for me that was where my yoga journey really started, because I got started to get into the depth of it. And then over time I've met different teachers. I started attending a yoga philosophy class, which
Yep.
really got me into the mind of a yogi and the
Mhm.
acceptance of where we are, not being competitive, right? I learned early in my yoga classes that if I was in the back of the class, I
Yeah.
was very self-conscious because I was watching everybody and be like, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that. But I started going to the front of the class because then I was not distracted. And as I became more aware of the philosophy and the goal of one of the goals is to kind of be at peace, honor where you are,
Yes.
wherever your body is. It's
Yes.
not about looking like that perfect pose, where you are. Um, as I started to do that, I also started to lose the fear of, like, I could do my yoga class anywhere. I could be anywhere in the
Mhm.
room and not be as distracted because I knew I only had to worry about, not even worry, but I only had to pay attention to where I was
Yeah.
in that moment on that day.
Yeah.
Right. So it's been quite a journey. And I have struggled with this pandemic for not being able to be in a yoga class. Because while I can do a lot of those things at home too, for me, there is something about being in a class, being led by somebody.
Hmm.
And there's something very sacred about it. Yoga for me became a little bit like my time to pray,
Yeah.
my time
Yeah.
to connect through my body to my spirit, because what I can do there, that mindset of where else am I applying that in my life? Where else am I struggling to accept where I am? Where else am I releasing? So it's not just about body movement, but the body became a vehicle to connect to this, to the divine, if you will.
Yes. Yes.
So I just really like one of my teachers, I used to attend her class, and I would ask her questions about a certain pose and certain, like, how my feet should be and where I had pain. And she said to me, she's like, have you considered taking a YTT course? And I asked her why. She's like, because you ask questions like a teacher.
Yeah.
So that planted a seed. Maybe one day I'll do YTT, but I not with the intention of doing anything with it, but just to really expand on my yoga journey. So that was a very long answer, but that was my yoga
Oh,
that has been so far anyway.
that's like perfect. Like because that you literally hit on because here's the one thing. And again, we're talking about movement. And
Mm.
movement it is about you. And the one thing you said about the hot yoga, I remember the first time I did hot yoga and I did it like literally once. And but I had this little girl and when I say little girls, I just mean you know ageism is a thing and I wasn't even old. I think I was like 40. So but this little 20 something at the front desk is like, oh well, this helps you detoxify. And I just looked and this is the whole part and I try not to be obnoxious but I know I can be. And I just go, yeah, the body's built to detoxify. Like everything, this body, we sweat, our liver, like our whole body is built to get rid of this stuff. So it's like, and you brought up the most important point. When it's hot outside, you can do things and you think, oh, look at how flexible I am. And then all of a sudden the next day you wake up with intense excruciating pain because you pulled a muscle. And because it was so warm, you didn't even know you pulled it.
Right, right. It numbs your senses, right?
Exactly. And then one of the most important things I think with yoga is, and again, if you just said the perfect, everything that you said was perfect. The most important thing about number one, like you were talking about your chiropractor is part of your team, right? This is your team that helps you navigate this, whether it's an RMT, a massage therapist, chiropractor, yoga instructor.
Fully.
They're all helping you, where all of their roles should be to help you. You're the director of all these people. So it sounds like you've got a really good connection with your chiropractor because it is an educational, right? It is encouraging you to love yourself where you are. That's exactly what it is. And then again, the most important thing is that at some point in time when you take yoga, you need to take something that's like a one-on-one, four-on-one, fundamentals. Feel what it's like when you're doing a good downward dog, because that's the whole thing, is that if you're putting your head up to go look at what everybody else is doing, you're not doing a downward dog.
No.
You're focusing on everybody and you're wrenching your neck. But
Hmm.
it's like, so now the fun part is that when you go into that downward dog and you feel your body and you feel, and you're a really good instructor, they're doing this 1,000 times. Like any good instructor, they'll be going, okay, now you're going to shift your shoulders back and away from your ears, and
Right.
and your shoulder blades are coming in and down your body. See, look at you already. You're
I'm already doing it. Like,
do it, right? Because you know that exactly that's it. But the
right,
other part is like the strength in our hands. We
right,
use these all the time.
right.
They talk about spreading the fingers and using and increasing the muscles and the tendons and the fascia, anything that's in our hand. And then you get into your feet, when they have you go up on your toes and then you go down. Oh my God, I love that.
No, it's like,
And the first time that you do like your hips back and you feel the difference between, as you said, everything being on your wrists to everything being like the physics of your body when you're actually distributing the weight properly because you're engaging your muscles, right?
yeah.
So
I feel like hot yoga should not be allowed unless you've taken a um, like there should be like a prerequisite to understand basic anatomy,
Yep. Yep.
and there should be like a level one, like heart yoga. It's
Yeah.
my
Personally,
experience is it really should qualify
yeah.
who goes
Yeah.
into those rooms,
Personally, I
right?
don't like it at all. And
Right.
anybody that asks me, it's just like, hey, you know what? Because everything that you said. So one of the purposes that we're looking at this tonight, although this is it, because you talk about the spiritual connection too. I mean, I remember there's been 2 times when I took yoga, and I mean, exactly after that point where you actually understand that yoga is your connection to the divine through the postures. So there's two.
Got it. Yeah, postures is one form of yoga. Like there's breath yoga, there's yoga philosophy. So the body is a vehicle, and we can use.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And that, so like we were doing sun salutations. If you do, so here's a thing for movement. Find an instruction or instructor. I know that yogagrove.ca, I'll post a link for them underneath this video, but they do online and they're fabulous. All the instructors there, because in real life, like pre-COVID, there's not more than 6 or 8 people in a class. So when you go do restorative yoga, they move you. And I know that when I had my post-traumatic stress, when I was first diagnosed and I was a walking flesh wound, that literally saved my life. No word of a lie. And
Yeah.
why is that? It's because one of the things that I needed to do is I needed to stay in my body, right? So I would disassociate and just, take off and leave. And so
Mm.
one of the things there is I had my whole team, but yoga was part of that for me to be able to be aware of my body and feel and allow myself to calm down. So that was again magic. And
Mm.
this one time I was in Cayman, and thank God I had all this experience, because when it came to a time where I needed it for what its purpose is, your body remembers. Your body remembers
Right.
what a really good downward dog feels like. Your
Totally.
body remembers when you're doing a warrior, and the purpose behind that warrior is to feel the strength in your body, the engagement of your core, which I'm going to get more into on Wednesday night when we do the second body. I'm going to talk about how we use our individual muscles outside of a movement class when we're sitting at our chairs, things like that. So we were doing a sun salutation. We were in Cayman, and this class was like magic. And maybe you felt this too. I'm not sure, but there was 30 of us in this class. That was a pretty big class, but we had been doing it for a few weeks, and everybody was just really cool. Like it was just a really good. There wasn't any jackasses, any of those. Oh, I'm a yoga super god. And this is really sounding judgmental, but and so we went into the sun salutation, and and literally you could feel the electricity flowing through your body, through all of them. And when we finished that, it was like we're all like, woo! And you
Buzzing, right?
right? Yeah, I'm buzzing just remembering it.
I can feel it, and you're talking to me. I have a physical reaction to that.
Exactly. And the instructor was like, that's the most magical thing I've ever experienced. And it was just awesome, right? And so that's the whole thing, because the biggest thing about yoga, and this is the second, because you talked about how it connects us to the divine. There was this storefront in Mississauga somewhere, and I wasn't even remotely close to being as, like, this is still back when I was disassociating. I just wasn't aware of it.
Mm. Yeah.
And I went into this yoga place, and this guy comes to the door, and he's like looking in my eyes, and he had these blue eyes, and he was just, I knew he was looking into my soul. He was just, one of these yoga people that it's like they are Sadhguru, right? They're just, oh yes, life is just, and you know that they're not really on this plane anymore. They're just like, woo.
Yeah.
And there was 5 of us in this class, and I was the only one that hadn't gone to India for like an extended ashram visit. And I went in there, but this guy looked at me, and it was like, whoa, man, that's a little too intimate. And all he was doing was going, hello, come on in, right? And we were in Shavasana, right, which is corpse pose.
Yes.
And
A difficult one to do too.
oh my God, I was gone. I don't even know where I was. I mean, It's funny because I know that I disassociate now. I mean, I've done flying in dreams and stuff like that before, but I was gone. I could hear the guy going, "Come back." And it's like, "No, man, I can't." And this is because we're all connected with the energy of everybody that was in that room. And because they could and this is where you being fully present in that class is also allowing the safety for others to be able to feel that connection as well.
I love how you said that. That is very true. We are there not just for ourselves, but we are contributing to the collective, not just taking from it,
Yes.
not just receiving from it. And there is absolutely a huge difference in the experience of a yoga, whatever time, yoga time on the mat, whether I do it by myself or if I do it in a class, the experience when it's a shared experience, especially when it's with like-minded, like-hearted, like-spirited people, um, it is magical. It's pretty magical. Yeah.
And it's hard because there's, unfortunately, when yoga gets really popular, as you said, the popular is that then people there, it's also a business model. So you really have to be very intentional in what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, when you are doing this kind of thing, it's all right if you want to go and do, whatever. But I remember like once I was in a restorative class, there was 30 people. Somebody sneezed next to me and I felt it on my arm. And I'm like, there's nothing relaxing about this, that I can feel somebody else's, especially, oh my God, now we're,
Can you
imagine
imagine? Oh
post
my God.
COVID, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if we could, like, it would you could not. Like, how could we go into restorative class now and be propped up with all those things that are
Yeah.
for the community to use? Like, how is that going to come back? How I would be
Well,
lovely to be
I
able to
can
get
tell
back to
you that
that.
like Yoga Grove, like, and that's why I chose the studio, which is yogagrove.ca. And they do online, but they had restorative classes with not more than 6 people.
Yeah.
So you get the attention you need, but you can also allow your body to relax. And I think like even when like part of what I was supposed to what I wanted to talk about today was about the stretching, the flexibility. But the thing is, and the thing is that I think we both hit on is the fact that when your body, when you can relax into a pose and you can breathe into those muscles, you know, um, then it allows your body, and this is, and seriously, because I know Jenny, you were talking about hip flexor tightness, right? And that you stretched in the middle of your walking, and that's good. It's not like everybody has to do yoga, but
Yeah.
you can go online anywhere and look for, I mean, we're notorious for tight hips. We have tight hips, it affects everything.
Yeah.
We talked about being up on your toes or having your hands. Don't you love when you put your feet on the ground and you lift up all your toes and separate them? And then you bring them down and you feel the strength in your feet. Now you may not have that right now, but that's probably, this is one of the other things is when I went to China, we went to Macau to race for Dragon Boat, and
Mm.
everybody squats, right? Like you have the 5-star happy place, or you just have a hole and you squat over the hole. And the thing is though, is that is natural for your body.
That's how we do it well, that's how it's done in India. Like traditional, that's how it is. And I've seen there being now things to help prop, like to use in our modern facilities
Yes.
to prop our feet up for that position. But that is natural. And there is explanation. Like in yoga, when we do that, when we do that kind of pose, like the sitting with squatting with that, for to be
Yep.
to uh, to allow the bodily function through that, it actually facilitates that pose, facilitates the function
Yes.
of all of those organs, making it easier to go.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. That's what, yeah.
those are all forgotten.
Yep.
That's forgotten wisdom.
Well,
It's modernized, but we've lost the wisdom there. We've lost the reasoning,
yep.
and unfortunately, there's just like the fads and the modern things pick up because they're cool and they're easier. They are easier for people who are not able to, but we've forgotten why that was the way it was. Like, I don't see us going backwards, but it's still helpful to understand and then do what our body, like outside of that room, we can still help our body do the things naturally if we know how to use certain poses, certain stretches, certain exercises, if you will, to allow for that. Yoga is to help our body align to do what it's naturally designed to do. It knows
Yeah,
what to do. All we have to do is learn to work with it.
exactly. Exactly.
So,
And so when this comes to flexibility, as I said, like, a couple of weeks ago, is that flexibility is more important than endurance. It's important for your lungs and your heart to be able to move and do what they need to do, but it's really important for your muscles to be able to be, lengthened out, not shortened out. Why do we have a lot of problems in our hamstrings? Because we sit and they tighten up. So we need to be able to, again, I'm going to talk about this because look at this. We can, again, this was a wonderful conversation. I have loved this, Hina. It's been perfect and everything because that's what we do. We just talk, right? So, but on Wednesday, right back here at the same place, I am going to talk about individual, and it is going to be things like how do we use our feet when we start getting to do bare feet, like lifting up all of our toes, separating our toes, because you're absolutely, I love the fact that you brought in the mountain pose. Mountain pose is so important. That is you putting your roots into the ground and connecting with Mother Earth,
yeah,
right? And squatting down on our like, stretching our toes is gives us the flexibility in the fascia and the muscles in our feet. We have the most amount of bones are in our feet, right? So we need to be able to, and again, this is connection with our body. It can hurt. It can be, if it's tender, it's because we haven't given it enough attention.
that's right.
Even if you just rub your feet a little bit and just say, oh, beautiful feet. And I know maybe it sounds funny. Last week, or on the last show, I talked about, the whole thing about feeling your heart beating, feeling your lungs when you're breathing, that your breath should come into the lower part of your belly. And if it doesn't, you can practice. And
That's
to be able to just keep your hand on your heart and say, oh, beautiful heart, you beat for me, support me. And that's really, yoga is all about that, in the way that it
body
was,
awareness.
yeah, exactly, in the way that it was created. So as another aside, by the way, yogagrove.ca, they're doing a class on Monday, and it's a fundraiser it's called Air for India. And so all the proceeds are going to be going to, um, sending, oxygen to places in India that need it. So that you can share that as well. But this was, again, it's a perfect conversation. We went everywhere. This could have been actually the spiritual part, which we're going to do on the last Wednesday of the month. But I mean, it's so important. But this is exactly it. Movement matters because everything we do affects everything that we are, right?
Yes. It's always, it's movement makes us aware of our body, and we can get out of that if we are stuck in our mind. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's an imbalance.
Yeah,
And in that imbalance, the body's hurting.
yeah,
Um, so movement helps kind of make us present more.
yeah,
I even for like if I go for a 10-minute walk, I find, and if I don't take music with me to distract me or whatever, suddenly like things that I was stuck thinking about, suddenly there's more flow.
yeah,
Right? So for me, it's not just the physical movement, but that physical movement actually becomes a little bit of a meditative experience as well.
yeah.
Right?
Absolutely,
Like people who
absolutely.
go running, like they'll talk about that zone.
Yeah,
People who love spending time in the gym, they're in their zone. What's that zone? That zone, it's meditative. It doesn't have to be traditional meditation forms,
yeah,
but movement can bring us to that state. Cycling, when you go cycling for a long time, like all of those. So it's a great, I love what you said about being able to go grocery shopping on your walking or on your bike, because now it's a way to incorporate movement
yeah.
in your errands in your day to day when possible. let's do that. Park your car far so you can walk to the
Exactly.
store, sort of thing, right? So yeah,
Exactly.
little bits in small pockets of time. Every little bit of movement is helpful.
And then as you go, and so on Wednesday, join myself. It's just going to be on me Wednesday, unless somebody else wants to join. I don't know. So we'll be doing the second part of the body, and
Okay.
then the week after, we're going to be talking about the mind, which is all about that. It's like how do we make the mundane exciting, right? How do we make the seeing the same thing? Anyways, so that'll be mind, and then we'll get into the spiritual connection, which I think we covered.
I touched on everything, didn't I?
You did. It's
Did I
like,
give it
I mean,
away?
how perfect. So this is why we have just talking, because that's the whole thing, is that it's just a conversation. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Hina, for coming by tonight. I really love you. I love our conversation, and we'll see you again. And
Thanks for having me again. It's great to be back.
I know, it's so exciting. Okay, so thank you,
Right.
everybody, and we shall see you on Wednesday for the Movement Matters Challenge, and next Sunday, right back here for Just Talking. Have a great week and enjoy the sunshine. Oh, yes, and happy Mother's Day to everybody.
Thanks.
Okay, love
Bye,
you
Gwenda.
all. Okay.